and welcome to WomanVision TV. It's where women talk. I'm your host, Nadia Giordana, and my guest today, Sheila Krejci, calls herself an accidental trainer. Let's go talk to her and find out what that's all about. Hi Sheila, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you could be here today.
Thank you, Nadia. I really appreciate the opportunity. This is awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. Before we get started, why don't you take a minute and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely, I'd love to do that. I am, first and foremost, I'm an author. I'm a facilitator. I'm a designer and a coach of professionals, primarily in the workplace, but oftentimes in the community, in volunteer situations, and in other environments. The latest and greatest is with city councils and mayors. I work with individuals, primarily, and organizations who present to other audiences. Mm-hmm. I started Sheila K training probably now almost 14 years ago, after I left a position in the healthcare industry. And the idea of Sheila K training was to continue the work that I used to do in corporate training. I did everything from designing and delivering courses on customer service, we called it patient service in the healthcare industry, customer service, supervisory skills, management skills, team dynamics, compliance. I even did sexual harassment training, what I now call respectful workplace training, all kinds of those things. My real love though, my expertise, I would say, is in helping other professionals deliver and design presentations with compelling messages that showcase their expertise. So it might be a fellow author. It might be an attorney or a physician or an engineer, anybody who has a certain expertise that they're trying to get across to their audience. Oftentimes it's dry material. It might be very functional, very technical types of things. And so I help them create a succinct, compelling message. I do everything from helping them create the flow of their message right down to the materials and the media they use. In fact, I've often said my goal in life is to rid the world of boring PowerPoints with bullet points. I hate that kind of stuff. So the work that I do with clients is usually, well, it's customized. So I might work with an individual client by observing them, watching them present themselves, and then helping them to redesign the flow, redesign their materials, redesign that awful PowerPoint presentation, whatever it might be. Or I'll work with organizations of leaders. Quite often it's leaders in organizations that call me in, and I'll work with the group, but I will always customize that workshop or that presentation.
Okay, well, you call yourself an accidental trainer. Tell us what exactly that means.
Yeah, absolutely. I became a trainer by accident, and now I train trainers kind of by accident. Several years ago, I left the healthcare industry. I was a healthcare administrator, and I suffered the loss of my second son. Joshua was a victim of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, we call it. Didn't know anything about it at the time.
We didn't in those at that time period, did we?
No, my parents were alive at the time. They'd never even heard of it. Yeah. None of the professionals that I went through care with had any idea what SIDS was. It was a terrible, terrible, dark, spiraling down into a big hole for me.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that I had a great support system, I had wonderful parents. I had a very supportive husband. I had a child. Had another one on the way. I just couldn't get myself out of that hole.
Sure.
What happened, though, was due to a couple of very courageous women who used Joshua's name all the time. They encouraged me. They got me to tell my story, to tell Joshua's story, to tell my story. And the more and more I did that, the more energized I got, the more passionate I became about letting people know what I had endured, what my family was enduring, not only Joshua's death, but the devastation that it left for all of us. And while I didn't return to the workplace immediately, I did begin doing some volunteer work for the SIDS Center, which is at Children's Hospital downtown Minneapolis. I worked with Dr. Carolyn, the medical director, and the executive director, and started doing some public speaking. Something I hadn't done a lot of. I'd done a little bit, but not a lot of. But you know, I found myself talking about Joshua more and more and more. I would tell my story, and then Dr. Carolyn or Kathleen would talk about SIDS and the services of the center and so on. And the more and more I did it, the more I was energized and excited. I was really able to get my audience engaged in a dialogue. It wasn't just telling the story. And in fact, I will tell you, Nadia, that the thing that wasn't satisfying was just telling the story. I had to do more. I had to get people to do something with it. And in fact, the dialogue was all about, thanks for telling us that. Now what do we do? What can we do? People want to help. They just don't know how. So quite frankly, it was an accidental way of getting into talking to audiences. I found myself in front of physicians, in front of child care providers. SIDS is something that happens in child care homes more and more now.
Sure.
Physicians don't talk about SIDS to expectant mothers. I also talked to lots of grieving parents, of course, but I found myself in front of funeral directors and all kinds of folks, teachers and administrators, who are trying to help a grieving child navigate the chaos of a classroom. So it was all about, how do I get people not only to become more self-aware through my story, but also get them to do something different, which is truly what training is all about.
Yeah.
I believe there's a lot of us accidental trainers out there. We get into doing training in organizations and outside of organizations because we're good at what we do. And when you become an expert at something, you always get called in to teach somebody else. There's a huge difference, though, between what I call procedural knowledge, being able to do something, or you have firsthand knowledge of it, and declarative knowledge, which is then teaching someone else, being able to articulate and teach someone else. And that's where my business is focused, on helping people understand adult learning theory, what the brain research tells us about how we learn best, how we learn most quickly and most effectively. And that's what I teach in my seminars and with my coaching work.
You know, we often become experts out of sometimes sad, sometimes tragic, different kinds of life experiences bring us to a point where we do become experts. Well, I love the title of your book, which I think also came out of this, but you'll tell us about that. It's called The Engaging Expert, a field book for occasional speakers and accidental trainers.
Yep. Wow, good job. Good job.
There must be a story behind that.
Yeah, there is. There really is. I had a class probably about 3 years ago now, and it was attorneys. It was all attorneys. It was a pretty large class, about 30 people. And there was a gentleman sitting off to the side of the classroom like this. And you know, to a presenter or a speaker, that usually says, well, in Minnesota it might sound cold, but usually it says something like, oh, what's she going to be able to tell me? So I imagined him as an attorney thinking, what's she going to tell me about talking to my juries or my peers? And I was close. At the end of the first day, it was a 3-day class, at the end of the first day, the gentleman came up to me, no longer arms crossed, and he said, you know, I never would have come to this class if it wasn't mandatory. And he caught me off guard, and I first thought, thank you for your honesty, but what? And I just said, tell me more. And he said, well, the name of your class is The Accidental Trainer. I'm not a trainer. I'm an expert. I'm an attorney, and I'm an expert in employee law. And when people call me, my clients call me, or their clients call me and want me to talk about that, it's my expertise they're after. And you know, I thought about that for a very long time, and I thought, you're absolutely right. My audience, the people that I'm trying to influence myself with my expertise, is not trainers. It's professionals. It's experts in their own content, whatever that might be. And those are the people that don't have a lot of time to spend on developing a presentation and knowing their audience and figuring all of that out. My audience are those folks. And so I changed the name. Now, I couldn't get rid of Accidental Trainer because I loved it.
And
all my materials said Accidental
Trainer.
Yeah,
it's great. It's great.
Yeah, so I kept it. But I did call it The Engaging Expert because it really is about engaging people in a dialogue with your expertise so that they know what to do with it. It is including the presentation, the content of what you're saying, and a call to action, which is all about, now I've gotten this information from you, what do I do with it? And I truly believe that trainers and presenters have a responsibility to their audiences to not just dump information on them or tell a story, but also say, now here's how it impacts you, and here's what you might be able to do next with it.
That makes sense. Now, if someone out there has your book and opens up the pages and begins reading, what are some of the things they're going to get out of there?
The reason that I call it a field book in the first place is that it's very practical. It's very practical tools and techniques. I start off with some stories, and in fact there are stories sprinkled throughout the whole book. Stories that come from my own presentations, my own horror stories, as well as my own success stories, and that of my co-author. But the primarily what you'll find is tools and techniques that you can use immediately. So it's not a begin at the beginning and read it through to the end. It is pick out the pieces that are most important, and you'll find ideas for openers, for closers, for what I call alternatives to lecture. So you're not a talking head in front of your audience, but is there another way to engage them around the content so they become discoverers themselves of the content and how they might use it. So it's very practical tools and techniques. The second edition, which I'm working on alone, not with a co-author, is more of that. It's more workbook style.
Is that your new book, your second book?
No, that's an entirely different one.
Okay.
So that's a supplement.
So
to
it's
this
a new
book.
addition to the original book.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and you do have another book that you're coming up with. Now, can we hear something about that, or is that still a secret?
Oh, not at all, not at all. I'd love to talk about it. In fact, I just spoke with my co-author on that one. Irene Kelly is a friend, a colleague, and a former coach of mine. And Irene and I have been collaborating for about a year on the book that we are kind of calling Our Greatest Contribution. We haven't settled on the exact title, but it will be something like that. The focus really is on helping the reader explore and discover and live out their greatest contribution. That is their purpose. What gets them up in the morning, what energizes them, what keeps them passionate about career and life in general. The focus of this book, just like the Engaging Expert Workbook, is going to be on very practical tools, ideas, lifelong practices that people can engage in. And those come from the coaching experience that I had with Irene, as well as the work that she does with a lot of individuals, and I do with individuals and teams. So it's the kind of thing it's not theory, it's not theoretical, it's not the kind of book that you'll read and put it on your shelf. It is the one that you'll pull out and reread and try new practices all throughout your career and all throughout your life. I think I'm so excited about it, I'm so jazzed about it coming out, and truly we're hoping it's coming out yet this year.
Oh, that'll be exciting. We'll be watching for that. Before we go, Sheila, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd want the viewers to know?
Yeah, in fact, thank you for asking that. I was thinking about this. My divine discontent, if you will, is really this urgency to be the best that I can be. And that's really with my family, my friends, but particularly with my clients. That urgency, I think, translates into this restlessness around continually learning and challenging and growing. And again, that's the focus of my business. But I really, really encourage my clients to continue doing that. And in fact, several years ago, I wrote a curricula around networking, the whole activity of networking. It was called Networking is a Lifetime Skill. And it's still available on Amazon. But Networking is a Lifetime Skill was all about the activity of building relationships, of communicating with others, building the relationships. And I equate the activity, networking, to that of a trapeze artist. You know, a trapeze artist on walking the high wire is able to practice new routines, take risks, because underneath her she has this safety net. My network is my safety net when I need a new client, or I need a resource, or I need a friend. So I would encourage your listeners, if there are people out there, to connect with me, to network with me, to find the synergies that we share. Maybe it's around me helping them with presentations, or working in, more effectively in teams. It might be training, but I'm always looking for what can I learn from others. So I really love the idea of people connecting with me And there's lots and lots of ways to do that.
There really, really are. Well, if someone wants to learn more about what you do, find your book, get a hold of you, do you have a website?
I do. The Engaging Expert, so it's www.engagingexpert.com or SheilaKTraining.com. They'll take you to the same place. That's probably the best way to find out more about what I do, other than truly connecting with me. I love to build relationships. I love to have people just call me, pick up the phone and call me, or email me. And you can find all that information on my website.
Oh, great.
So,
well, Sheila, thank you for being here today. It's been a real pleasure.
thank you, Nadia, so much. I appreciate, again, this opportunity.